I never thought a single sentence could break a man wide open, but my wife's last words did exactly that. She looked at me, took a shallow breath, and said something so simple yet it haunts me every single day. She said, "I wish you had really been here with me." And just like that, 41 years of my life flashed before my eyes. I had been a provider. I worked hard, I paid the bills, I told myself I was doing everything right. But standing there in that quiet hospital room, I realized how wrong I had been. I was always busy, always tired, always saying, later? Later for conversations. Later for trips. Later for sitting beside her without checking my phone. And now there was no later left. For 41 years she waited for my attention while I was chasing deadlines, promotions, and things that suddenly felt meaningless. I thought love was about security and stability. She needed presence, she needed me. Not the man rushing out the door, not the man half listening, but the man who truly saw her. After she was gone, the house felt louder than ever. Her chair was empty, her laugh was gone, and the silence forced me to face a truth I had avoided my entire life. Time is the one thing you never get back. You don't realize you're wasting it until it's already spent. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to learn this lesson the way I did. If someone you love is still beside you, don't wait. Put the phone down, look at them, listen. Be there. Because one day their words might be your wake-up call, and by then, it might already be too late. There are moments in life that arrive quietly, without warning, yet they carry the weight of an entire lifetime. You don't see them coming, and you don't realize their importance until it's already too late to change anything. A single sentence, a brief look, or a final breath can suddenly expose years of choices you thought were harmless. In that instant, everything you believed about yourself is challenged. You may have spent decades thinking you were doing the right thing, being responsible, staying busy, sacrificing for the future. But one moment has the power to strip away those comforting stories and leave only the truth behind. When someone you love says something honest at the very end, it cuts deeper than any argument ever could. It bypasses excuses and defenses and goes straight to the heart. That moment becomes a mirror, reflecting not just who you were, but who you failed to be. All the missed conversations, the postponed plans, and the times you chose convenience over connection suddenly stand in perfect clarity. What once felt small and unimportant now feels enormous, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The tragedy is that this realization often comes when there is no opportunity left to make things right. You can't rewind the years. You can't show up more fully when the chance has passed. That single moment carries the accumulated weight of every, not now, every distracted response, every time you assumed there would always be more time. It reveals that neglect doesn't always come from cruelty, but from delay, distraction, and false priorities. What makes this kind of moment so devastating is its simplicity. There is no dramatic speech or long explanation, just a few honest words that collapse decades of denial. And once they are spoken, they echo endlessly. They follow you into quiet rooms, long nights, and empty mornings. They force you to confront a painful truth. Love isn't measured by intentions, but by presence. A lifetime can be quietly wasted without ever realizing it, until one moment exposes the cost in full, leaving a realization that arrives too late to change the outcome. For a long time, I believed that showing love meant working harder, earning more, and making sure everything was taken care of. I thought responsibility was the same as devotion. If the bills were paid and the future felt secure, then I was doing my part. That belief felt solid, unquestionable, and even noble. But over time it created a quiet distance I didn't notice growing. I was physically present, yet emotionally elsewhere, convinced that my effort was enough to carry the relationship. Providing can become a comfortable disguise. It gives you a sense of purpose and justification. You tell yourself that exhaustion is proof of love and that sacrifice excuses absence. But emotional presence requires something different. It demands attention, patience, and vulnerability. It means listening without rushing, noticing without being asked, and showing up even when there is nothing practical to fix. These things can't be outsourced, delayed, or replaced with good intentions. The danger lies in how easily providing becomes an escape. Work has clear rules, measurable results, and rewards that feel immediate. Relationships do not. They require you to slow down, to be uncomfortable, and to face emotions that don't come with instructions. So it becomes easier to stay busy than to stay connected. Easier to solve problems than to sit with someone's feelings. Over time, this creates a gap where love exists, but closeness fades. The most painful realization comes when you understand that the person you were providing for didn't need more money or more security. They needed you. Your voice, your attention, your curiosity, your presence in ordinary moments. They needed to feel chosen, not scheduled. Valued, not postponed. No amount of hard work can replace the feeling of being truly seen, Being emotionally present doesn't mean grand gestures or constant conversation. It means being available in the small, quiet moments. It means putting distractions aside and allowing someone to matter more than whatever else is competing for your focus. When presence is missing, even the strongest foundation can feel empty. And when that truth finally becomes clear, it's often accompanied by a heavy regret, realizing that love was there all along, but it needed attention more than provision. Later feels harmless when you say it. It sounds responsible, patient, and reasonable. Later after work, later when things slow down, later when life feels less demanding. You convince yourself that you're not saying no, just not right now. But time has a quiet way of turning later into never. Days blur into weeks, weeks into years, and before you realize it, the moments you postponed have already passed you by. The problem with later is that it creates an illusion of control. It makes you believe that time is waiting for your permission to move forward. You assume there will always be another chance to talk, another weekend to plan something special, another season to reconnect. But life doesn't work on reminders. It doesn't pause for business or good intentions. It keeps moving regardless of how prepared you feel. Every time you choose later, you are also choosing something else in its place. Another task, another distraction, another obligation that feels urgent in the moment. What you don't see is the quiet accumulation of missed opportunities, the conversations that never happened, the memories that were never created, the emotional distance that grows not from conflict, but from absence. Over time, later becomes a habit, and that habit shapes the relationships you live with. What makes later so dangerous is how invisible its damage is while it's happening. Nothing breaks immediately. No alarms go off. The people around you may still smile, still wait, still hope. But waiting has a cost. Being consistently postponed can slowly turn into feeling unimportant. And by the time that realization surfaces, the emotional gap can feel impossible to close. Eventually there comes a moment when later is no longer an option. A door closes, a voice goes silent, or a chance disappears without warning. In that moment, all the times you said later rush back at once. You understand too late that later was never guaranteed. The time you thought you had was borrowed, and now it's gone. What remains is the weight of knowing that the most meaningful moments in life don't wait to be scheduled. They ask to be lived when they arrive, because once they pass, they rarely come back again. Time feels abundant when you believe there is always more of it ahead. You spend it freely, assuming you can always earn it back or make up for what you've missed. In daily life, time becomes something you manage rather than something you cherish. It gets divided into schedules, deadlines, and obligations, quietly slipping through your hands while you focus on what feels urgent instead of what is truly important. The cruel reality is that time is the only resource that never replenishes. Money can be replaced, mistakes can be corrected, and relationships can sometimes be repaired, but lost time remains lost forever. Yet this truth rarely feels real until it's too late. Loss has a way of sharpening awareness, turning ordinary moments into painful reminders of what can no longer be experienced. Suddenly, the minutes you once wasted feel priceless, and the hours you rushed through become heavy with regret. When someone is gone, time transforms from something abstract into something deeply personal. You start counting it differently. You measure it in conversations you didn't have, embraces you shortened, and days you rushed through without truly being present. Each memory becomes a reminder that the clock was always moving, even when you weren't paying attention, and no amount of wishing can rewind it. What makes this realization so difficult is how subtle time's disappearance is. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand your attention. It simply passes, one ordinary day at a time. You don't notice it leaving until the absence becomes undeniable. That's when understanding arrives, sharp and unforgiving, revealing how casually you treated something so precious. The value of time is rarely felt in the present moment. It's felt in hindsight, when the opportunity to use it differently no longer exists. Regret is born from this gap between awareness and action. You finally understand what mattered most, but understanding comes after the chance to act has passed. Time teaches its most important lesson only once, and by the time it does, the cost has already been paid. What remains is the quiet realization that every moment you are given is irreplaceable, and once it's gone, it belongs only to memory. Love is often misunderstood as something dramatic or extraordinary, but in reality, it lives in the simplest moments. It's not always found in big declarations or grand sacrifices, but in quiet attention and shared presence. True love asks to be noticed in the everyday spaces where life actually happens. It grows when you listen without distraction, when you stay a little longer, when you choose to be fully there instead of somewhere else in your mind. Attention is one of the rarest gifts you can give someone. In a world full of noise, giving someone your full focus tells them they matter. It says they are worth your time, your patience, and your energy. When attention is missing, love can feel invisible, even if it still exists. People don't stop loving because they stop caring. They stop feeling loved when they stop feeling seen. Presence goes beyond simply being in the same room. It means engaging emotionally, noticing changes, and responding with care. It's the difference between hearing words and truly listening. When someone feels heard, they feel valued. When they feel ignored, even unintentionally, a quiet distance begins to form. Over time, that distance can grow into loneliness, even within a relationship that once felt strong. Listening is the bridge that connects love to understanding. It requires humility and patience, and it often asks you to set yourself aside for a moment. When you truly listen, you create space for someone else's thoughts, fears, and joys. That space is where trust deepens and connection strengthens. Without it, love can become shallow, reduced to routine rather than intimacy. What makes attention, presence, and listening so powerful is that they cost nothing but intention. Yet they are often the first things sacrificed to business and distraction. Love doesn't demand perfection, but it does require participation. It needs to be shown, not assumed. When these small acts are neglected, regret quietly takes their place. And one day, you may realize that love was always within reach, waiting patiently for the one thing it needed most, your presence, before it was too late. Love is often mistaken for something you feel, something that exists quietly in the background as long as it's there. But love is not passive. It asks for action, attention, and intention every single day. Without those, it slowly fades into routine. Attention is how love stays alive. When you focus on someone, when you notice their moods, their words, and their silences, you are telling them they matter. Without attention, love can feel like an afterthought, even when it is still present in the heart. Presence is what turns love from an idea into an experience. Being present means more than sharing space. It means putting aside distractions and choosing to fully engage with the person in front of you. It means being emotionally available, not just physically nearby. Presence creates safety. It reassures the other person that they are not alone, that they are not competing with work, screens, or stress for your awareness. When presence is missing, love can start to feel hollow, as if something essential is always just out of reach. Listening is where love becomes deeply personal. To truly listen, you must slow down and set your own thoughts aside. You hear not just words, but emotions, fears, and unspoken needs. Listening tells someone that their inner world matters to you. Without it, misunderstandings grow and distance quietly takes root. Many relationships don't end because love disappears, but because listening does. What makes these acts so powerful is their simplicity. They don't require grand gestures or perfect timing. They require choice. A choice to look up, to stay engaged, to care enough to listen. These small moments accumulate, shaping how loved someone feels over time. When they are consistently offered, love feels secure and alive. When they are neglected, regret often follows. Love doesn't warn you before it slips into memory. It doesn't announce the last time someone needed you. That's why attention, presence, and listening matter now, not someday. Because love is not something you preserve by intention alone. It survives through action, through showing up fully while you still can, before the chance to do so quietly disappears forever.